Hello, my name is Reach Rutherford, and today I'll be giving a presentation on why is Texas Tech's parking services considered a failure. So first, let's talk about why this is important. This is important because Texas Tech is a large research university who prides themselves on helping their students and being a cost-effective university. However, some students don't believe that Texas Tech reflects that goal. Students believe that Texas Tech's parking system hurts students by causing them to stress, lose money, and puts their students in risk of danger. So let's talk about my survey results that I found at first. 92.3% of students said that they've had a bad experience with the Texas Tech parking system. This is a statistically significant number, as that's over 90% of students claim that they've had a bad experience with the parking system here at Texas Tech, which I personally found as a surprising number, as I thought it would be a bit more 50-50. But for it to be as widespread as it is really interesting to me. And later in this presentation, we'll explore some reasons on why students believe that they've had a bad experience with the parking system here. So before we get started, let's hear an interview from Aaron Wheeler. Hello,
Hi,
what's your name?
Aaron.
Um, so let's get started with this interview. Um, do you believe that there's enough parking spots on Texas Tech campus for students and faculty to use together, or do you think there's not enough on campus?
I don't think there's enough. I feel like I'm always rushing to find a spot or going to school way too early to find a spot.
Yes, yeah, I think a lot of students feel that way, just like
Mhm.
how you do. Um, do you believe that parking spots are affordable for students to purchase after having to buy tuition, cost of tuition and dorms and rent and all the other purchases that students have to struggle to pay for?
I think especially being someone who lived on campus while you're living on campus, I think that should probably be included or something because we do pay so much just to live there. Why can't I park there?
Mhm. Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Um, do you believe that it's safe to walk on campus at night, or have you had any bad experiences walking on campus at night? Because the university expects students who don't have parking passes to have to walk um, from commuter parking lots all the way to their dorms. Do you believe that's safe for them to put their students and make them do?
I mean, I worked a lot of late nights, so I definitely had to walk back in pitch black by myself a lot of nights, which was pretty unsafe feeling. I often called for like a friend to come walk me or someone to talk to while I was walking.
Did you ever felt in like threatened, like your safety was in jeopardy?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, kind of anytime walking alone at night as a girl, like it feels unsafe.
Yes. And then lastly, do you believe that the school provides alternative options for students like buses? Do you think that Texas Tech promotes a good bike to class thing for off-campus students? Since, I mean, it kind of seems like off-campus students are forced to um, drive and park a car on campus just because that's the only option for them.
Um, I mean, I live pretty far from campus, so walking and biking kind of isn't an option. Across the highway and stuff like that. And I don't think there's many sidewalks. So buses kind of are the only option. And I've never figured out how to use the bus app or whatever it is. So I don't really know much about it. I don't think there's much education on it.
Mhm. It's not, it's more difficult than it needs to be, you would say.
I think so.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I think it's important to hear student testimonies like that, just to hear directly from the students how they feel about the parking services and just other topics along those lines. So why do students really feel this way? What are the reasons? So there are three main reasons for students' anger when it comes to the Texas Tech parking system. I found these out by talking to students, surveying students, um, asking students. The three main things that I found were the cost of parking passes, the unequal number of spots versus students, and the lack of alternative options for students. So let's start with the cost of parking passes. So residential parking passes can cost anywhere from $263 to $689.5 per the Texas Tech parking website. And off-campus students still have to pay for parking, which can cost up to $162 per the Texas Tech parking website. Students that I've asked and what I've kind of learned about this is that's a lot of money, especially on top of other expensive that students are paying for, like tuition, um, living expenses, classes, textbooks, um, dining hall plans here on campus. Sometimes that money that's supposed to go to a parking pass, you just can't sum up the money. Because 263 to 689 is not a small amount of money. It's a pretty big sum. Um, and so I believe that students believe that that's too expensive of a price for them to have to pay. And other universities that I've researched um, have a system where parking is completely complimentary with tuition. And I believe that Texas Tech should implement a service like that, since there's really no reason why they shouldn't. They have all the resources to make that happen, and yet they decide not to. But that's just my personal opinion. Let's look at the survey results that I found based on a price basis. So my first question that I asked is if students believe that Texas Tech parking passes are too expensive, and 76.9% of students say that they do believe that they are too expensive. And then here at the bottom two questions, on the bottom left, right here, I asked if um, students currently have a parking pass for the fall 2025 semester, and 61.5% of students said yes. And then here on the bottom right, I asked if you live on campus or off campus. And if they said no, like they live off campus, they were supposed to answer this question. Did you have a parking pass your freshman year? And 62.5% of students said that they did not have a parking pass their freshman year, which is a surprising number, seeing that um, parking passes are kind of aimed towards students living in the dorms their freshman year. So I was surprised to hear that number of 62.5. But I think these numbers make sense, and I could understand why students believe that the parking passes here are too expensive, seeing that almost 78% of students said that they believe they were too expensive, and a lot of students surprisingly didn't have parking passes. Moving on, let's talk about how there's not enough spots to go around. So Texas Tech claims that they sell one parking pass for every one spot on campus. Here's the issue with this, and you'll start to see the numbers not work out. Texas Tech has a total of 17,826 parking spaces on campus to sell to students per the Texas Tech parking services. And then Texas Tech has a total of 42,000 students enrolled. So there's a lot more students enrolled than there are parking spaces on campus. So that's an unequal number. And students still need to park to get to class. They're not just going to skip class because they can't find a parking space. And I can tell you from my personal experience, and I've heard stories similar to this from other students. I remember sitting on the parking website page whenever it opened and spamming the button, waiting for the website to open up so I could buy my parking pass, because I knew that I've heard stories and knew that they would all sell out very quickly. And you kind of need a parking pass here on campus since it's not a very walkable campus and a walkable town. And it just makes things more difficult if you don't have one. So that goes to show how there's really not enough spots to go around on campus. And you can see that in this bottom right picture that I attached right here, where compared to the campus size, which is huge, it's the second largest campus in America. There's only a few tiny little boxes for visitors to park, for students to park, and for faculty to park. And when you've got a campus that large and with that many students, especially when they're growing, the amount of spots aren't going to work for the amount of students that you have. So moving on, this was a surprising number for me to see. 100% of students believe that there are not enough spots on campus um, for them to use between faculty and students, which is a very surprising number since, I mean, everyone that answered this said that they didn't believe that. So I thought that was surprising personally, but it goes to back up what I was saying about how there's more students than there are parking spots, and that causes some imbalance and stuff. All right, moving on. Let's talk about how there's no other options. Um, a lot of students that I talked to said that they didn't feel safe walking from commuter to their dorm. For example, my girlfriend last year, she would work at a restaurant, and she was expected to walk all the way from commuter north to Murdo, which is like a 0.5 mile walk. And she would have some late nights. She would close sometimes. And it would be like 1 a.m. whenever she has to walk. And she didn't feel very safe walking at the middle of the night um, doing that. So I, that's kind of what I wrote down where I said not safe for students to walk from commuter parking lots. This was also an interesting statistic that I found that I think supports that. The NIH reports that 26.4% of all undergraduate women experience rape or sexual assault during college, and even more experience robbery, harassment, etc. Um, this number shows that Texas Tech is kind of putting their students in harm's way by expecting them to walk at night in dangerous conditions and circumstances since it's at night. And students don't really feel comfortable with that. Um, and I think that's a big negative that I've heard about the Texas Tech parking services is that they just don't feel comfortable. They don't feel safe parking far away from their dorm, especially at night. And especially with the crazy weather that Lubbock gets. Um, Students being expected to have to walk at night and in those conditions isn't fair to them. Um, I also wrote down that for off-campus living students, there's not really many alternative options for them to use. Um, the bus system on campus only has about 3 to 4 spots. And I've heard stories from students who told me that they've had to wait on the bus for an hour, hour and a half from it to pick them up to take them to their own individual apartment, which is just too long to expect for buses to take you reliably. And I think that's where a lot of the frustration comes because students are forced, they feel like they're forced to have to drive to campus if they even want to get to class on time. And this is what I'm saying, where I say 53.8% of students feel unsafe walking through Texas Tech's campus at night, showing that it's not fair for Tech to make their students do that when they don't own a parking pass. And 92.3% of students feel as if there are not good secondary options to getting to campus. So students feel like they're forced to have to drive to campus when they do that, they get in trouble and they run the risk of paying tickets. They're car getting booted, their car getting towed, not finding a parking spot, just different things like that that all add up to student stress and student anger with the system and dissatisfaction or correction. I'm trying to say dissatisfied. So I came up with some possible solutions to make all students happy to try to fix some of the problems that I've heard. Number one, we can start by making more commuter spots and parking garages for students to use, especially since the school's enrollment keeps rising. We could also eliminate parking passes and make them free or at least extremely cheap. And then we can increase enforcement and make sure people don't park where they're not supposed to. We could also add more bus stops on campus and prioritize riding public transportation like buses for off campus living students, as well as making programs to encourage riding bikes or scooters to campus. Then we could also add a new parking permit for a significantly cheaper price that makes students park farther from campus, allowing students to be able to have a parking pass at a cheaper price. As a conclusion, after listening to testimonies, research, and surveys, I've learned that students view the Texas Tech's parking system as a failed system. Whether it be not selling enough parking passes, the high prices of parking passes, or the lack of secondary options for off-campus students, Texas Tech has seemed to have failed their students with the current system. However, with my proposed solutions, I believe that Texas Tech's parking system can be fixed and allow for students to go to school without worrying about getting a ticket or getting to class on time. And here are my citations. Thank you.